hang on. That may look like a scene from a 1930s movies, but no, actually it's a scene from Movie, a new comedy starring George C. Scott, and one of 5 new films we'll be reviewing on Sneak Previews. 2 film critics talking about and sometimes arguing about the latest movies in town. And this is Roger Ebert, the Pulitzer Prize-winning film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And across the aisle from me is Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune and CBS TV News in Chicago. Now, in this program, we'll also be reviewing the bittersweet comedy Same Time Next Year, the film version of James Michener's best-selling novel Caravans, and something new on Sneak Previews. We're going to take a look at a big Hollywood hit that's coming to network television for the first time, the enormously popular American Graffiti. But first, Gene starts with a movie called Ice Castles.
2 shows ago, Roger, I complained about the many love stories we seem to be getting about cripples and seriously ill people. Boy, that's such an easy way to gain sympathy for characters and for a movie. Well, it's only February, and already we've got another sympathy flick, Ice Castles, a love and courage story about a teenage girl skater who wants to make it to the Olympics. Now, in the beginning of the film, at a practice for a regional competition, she really dazzles the other more experienced skaters who come from much bigger towns. Good skating, some stirring music. Lynn Holly Johnson plays the girl. Everything is sweetness and light in this picture, but whammo. Very quickly, there is a problem, an accident on the ice, a concussion. She loses about 90% of her sight in both eyes. Boy, the world suddenly becomes a hazy blur. But her boyfriend, Robbie Benson, insists at a dinner with her father and coach that she's got to try to skate again. And boy, is that cornball just phony emotion. He's not angry at her at all, and we can see it. And I think we've all seen that scene before, the lovers arguing as one tries to bolster the other's strength. Well, it's not easy to say you don't like a film like Ice Castles because you run the risk of people thinking you're against someone conquering blindness, so you can come off like a real meanie. But this movie, just like The Other Side of the Mountain, Part 1 and 2, Love Story, Parts 1 and 2, and Uncle Joe Shannon, just Part 1 so far, I'm hoping, seemed to me to be an empty formula picture without much real heart.
Well, it's a formula picture, but I think it does have a certain amount of sweetness, especially in the person of Lynn Holly Johnson, who plays the lead, the skater. Now, think of it this way. She's a new actress. This is her first full-length feature film. She's still in her teens. She has to come from a small town, make the Olympic trials, fall in love with 2 different guys, be blinded, make her come back, go back to the Olympics, fall in love with her childhood boyfriend again, and be a great skater. Now, that's a pretty big order for a 16 or 17-year-old girl, and I think she does a pretty good job in the picture.
She's fine, Roger, but I'll tell you, as I sit in that picture, I think the whole audience is thinking, I can't wait to see that accident. I think that the people who make films like this are oddly enough more interested in that accident than they are in the curing process. So in a way, this is just like one of those big 747 disaster pictures, only this one's on a small personal level.
Yeah, it always makes me feel kind of creepy in a picture like this when people are saying, now she's going to fall, you know.
Yes,
so
exactly.
Yeah.
That's the point.
The next picture doesn't make me feel creepy at all. It's called Same Time Next Year. The story of a couple who make it a point to meet at the same country resort one weekend of every year for 26 years. Now, that sounds innocent and romantic enough, except they aren't married to each other. He's faithful to his wife, she's faithful to her husband, and except for that one weekend every year. The movie's basically just a film version of the hit stage play Same Time Next Year, but the play was a good light entertainment with moments of truth, and so's the movie. There's a sort of wonderful chemistry that gradually develops between the couple, played by Alan Alda and Ellen Burstyn. But the first time they spend the night together, Alda feels guilty in the morning and tries to silently sneak away. And it doesn't go away, even though they survive some pretty tough times over the next 26 years. In fact, they survive some pretty rough times over the next 26 minutes. The movie shows us 5 of their weekend meetings, and so we get to watch the characters as they grow and change and develop. Ellen Burstyn, for example, starts out sort of simple and naive, like in that first scene that we saw, but she ripens into a liberated, self-reliant woman. Alan Alda is a pretty stuffy businessman at the beginning. He survives a phase as an aging hippie in the 1960s, love beads and all. Then he mellows into a pretty nice guy. In fact, they're both pretty nice people by the movie's end, and we've sort of grown up with them as their experiences over the years maybe reflect some of our own.
Well, at the risk of being the stick in the mud, I'm going to have a couple of objections. Number one, the movie plays itself out all in that same hotel room over their various meetings, and I got tired of the room. You know, I wanted them to change to at least another room. More important, though, I think the film for me was very much like a written stage play. It was a stage play, and when I hear these scripts where everything is pat and cut and dried and oh so clever, I think, hey, those aren't real people up there. It's just people talking a script.
Well, the people that I know, my friends don't talk like that, and that's why I go to the movies. I'd rather pay $4 and get away from the way my friends talk. I think, well, nothing against my friends, but drama heightens language. I mean, you should have witticisms, mannerisms, epigrams, double meanings, great comebacks, and so forth. And that's what you go to a comedy for, isn't it? Not to hear slice-of-life realism.
You know what happened, though? I didn't believe these people exist, and then they separate every little episode that they get together with scenes from real life, from 67, revolutions and things like this, 72, 73, and those photos, for me, were much more touching and real than these characters. So every time they came back to the characters, I sort of got let down.
I didn't.
Okay, then you liked it.
I loved it.
All right. Well, I tell you, I liked it a little bit more, maybe a lot a bit more than this next picture. Our next film is almost as dumb enough to be included in our Dog of the Week lousy movie category. It's Caravans, a creaky old-style desert picture about a nice young American man trying to rescue the beautiful daughter of an American senator who has run off in the desert with a nomad king. It's that old story of whether the beautiful girl prefers to live in boring America or with a noble savage. Michael Sarrazin confronts Jennifer O'Neill as she hides out in the desert with Anthony Quinn. Wow, Jennifer O'Neill is really a very bad actress there. She's stiff as a board, and Anthony Quinn looks bored doing a Zorba of Arabia number, and Michael Sarrazin truly looks uncomfortable. Now, during this movie, I started thinking about how hot it must have been during the filming of the picture, how the camels must have smelled, and I think the reason why I didn't think much about the movie is that because all Caravan was a will she or won't she go back to America picture. And she, Jennifer O'Neill, just wasn't a character worth caring about.
Okay, now, as long as we've been doing this program, you've always been going on and on about how you like pictures that take you to faraway places with strange-sounding names.
Yes, yes.
We have finally got you aboard a camel caravan crossing the Persian desert, and you're not happy.
Well, I'm not happy because, true, it does take me away from my movie seat physically. In other words, I'm looking at a faraway world. But every time these actors come on with this phony dialogue, Sarrazin and O'Neill, with their nasal accents, they sound like they just got off the beach at Malibu, you know. I really didn't, I was reminded I was back in a movie.
It's funny that Hollywood spent millions and millions of dollars to make this picture in Iran last year, needless to say, and the picture used to be made better in the back lot in Hollywood studios.
Yeah, we're just getting bad dialogue. There's no verb. These are not exciting people.
Here's one that has some exciting people. You know, even the movies that are the biggest hits at the box office aren't seen by nearly as many people in movie theaters as when they eventually turn up on television. So, from time to time on Sneak Previews, we're going to be reviewing important movies that are about to be shown on network TV for the first time, sort of a sneak reviews. Anyway, on Sunday, February 18th, NBC will be broadcasting a landmark 1974 film called American Graffiti. You could almost say this picture started the revival in teenage nostalgia. The movie takes place during the early 1960s, and it's about a bunch of teenagers on the last night before their high school graduation, the last night they could still be kids. The movie star was a newcomer named Richard Dreyfuss, and here he is in that basic teenage trauma situation, the straight kid confronting the greasers. I was that kid. I'm telling you, this movie really strikes a chord, and Dreyfuss is great in that scene. He won an Academy Award as Best Actor just 4 or 5 years later. American Graffiti seemed to strike a responsive chord in a lot of people who remembered the early 60s, the days before the assassinations and the Vietnam War, the days when cruising down Main Street took on an almost metaphysical significance, and I don't know, I think no matter when we went to high school, somehow we felt we graduated with that class.
I love this movie. I love the music. And I love most of all, I think, the characters that we get to meet here and what happens to them. We see the four-eyed kid. We see the girl who's too promiscuous.
The hot rodder.
We see the little girl who wants to be promiscuous. What happens is George Lucas, the director-writer, puts these kids together in odd combinations, the way they wouldn't normally meet in a real high school. They'd be separate. And what happens is they're all changed by that, and they grow up and they learn to like different kinds of people. And I think what's serious about this film is if kids got out of their little molds, I think they'd have a better time in high school.
In a way, the movie is a rite of passage. It takes place during one night. They go into it as high school kids, everyone in a compartment. They started as freshmen. They were categorized. They were stuck that way until they were seniors. Now suddenly life has started. They have to start all over again.
Yes, it's a beautiful film, and I'll be watching that film rather than the other stuff on TV that night, Marathon Man and Roots 2. Right. Yeah. Now, here's another film with a different kind of nostalgia. Last time in our 1978 Year in Review show, we mentioned the big trend in movies today is lighthearted, old-fashioned entertainment. Well, our next film, Movie, is truly a throwback to old-fashioned movies. It's a parody of a 1930s double feature, a boxing film, then a musical, and in between we get some coming attraction previews, all in just an hour and 3/4. The first short film is called Dynamite Hands, shot in black and white, with George C. Scott as a kind-hearted old boxing manager who spots a champion hiding inside an innocent young delivery boy. The kid wants to make just enough money from the fight game to pay for an eye operation for his sister. Listen to this parody of old-time movie dialogue. A very cute scene. Will the kid win his big fight? Come on, of course he will, but the story gets much cornier and goes way beyond that. Movie is great because unlike that corny Ice Castles movie, the ice skating film, which was a total cliche, this film laughs affectionately at old movie cliches. The second short film in Movie is shot in color. It's a musical, Baxter's Beauties of 1933, with a young accountant, Barry Bostwick, getting inspired to write a hit song by a girl as they bill and coo on Where Else but a tenement rooftop. Just wonderful. I've seen that scene before, but I don't mind seeing it again. And now George C. Scott, of course, appears in this film, too, as this time as a theater owner who desperately needs a hit. And it's no crime to tell you, of course, that he gets one, and, happy to say, much, much more. In short, Movie is a witty, good old time, truly a lot of fun.
I wish I could go all the way with you. I cannot quite. I liked a lot of the movie. I laughed frequently. George C. Scott has two just absolutely hilarious parodies of Hollywood death scenes. But I don't know, both boxing movies and musicals are kind of parodies of themselves, and this one had to push so far to get beyond them that I thought I could finally just find it straining.
I disagree, because I think that the people who made these pictures are in love with these kind of pictures. I think they secretly know that Hollywood isn't doing any better than when it made those pictures.
Maybe they should have made a real one then instead of a parody.
Well, that's the signal from Spot the Wonder Dog, who can spot bad films like fire hydrants, that it's time for Dog of the Week, the feature where each of us picks the week's worst movies.
Well, Spot, my dog this week is an expensively publicized movie called Beyond and Back. He wants to prove there's life beyond the grave, but I've got very bad news for you. I'm afraid that it doesn't. Instead, it gives us very bad actors playing people who've allegedly died and departed from their bodies and taken an all-expense-paid trip around the universe and returned once again to Earth. But what I want to know is if these people really made it back, how come they aren't in the movie? Well, a pseudoscientist stands around narrating the film, but the real hero is whoever designed the intensive TV ad campaign. Beyond and Back is a good example of something called a four-wall movie. That means the distributor comes into town and rents a lot of theaters, all four walls, for a flat fee, and then plows a fortune into advertising. The idea is to suck in a lot of people before the word gets out that this film is a turkey. The only good thing about most four-wall movies, Gene, is that the walls of the theaters have doors, so you can get out.
I think I'll never get inside that one. My Dog is another fast buck affair with a big advertising campaign. It's a depressing hangdog... Sorry about that. Film, a shallow would-be documentary, The Late Great Planet Earth, which interprets current world crisis like the oil shortage, famine, and air pollution as signs that the world is coming to an end, much as is prophesied in the Book of Revelations. In other words, you can pay up to $4 to see this movie and walk out of the theater feeling thoroughly depressed. Orson Welles serves as narrator, but even he can't sell this bilge, which speculates that we're all headed toward the end of the world, with the signals being the founding of Israel and the European Common Market. What a lot of nonsense.
Indeed. So much for the dogs. Let's take another look at the major movies on this program. Ice Castles, rated PG, was a slippery romance about a figure skater. Gene thought it was cornball. I thought the performances were mostly good, but we both gave it a no vote. We can't recommend you see it. We had a split decision on Same Time Next Year. I liked it, especially the chemistry between Ellen Burstyn and Alan Alda. Gene thought it was another bad talky screen version of a play. I say yes, Gene says no. Caravans was a film we both thought got lost in the desert, so 2 no's for that one. But we had another split decision on Movie. Gene loved it and gives it a big yes. I thought the parody wore thin toward the end, and I gave it a fairly reluctant no. We both say yes, though, to American Graffiti, the 1973 hit movie. It'll be telecast Sunday, February 18th on NBC TV at 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
Now, on our next show, we're going to be taking a look at The Brinks Job, a light comedy based on the famous 1950 Boston Brinks robbery. Also, Robert Altman's new film, Quintet, starring Paul Newman, and Sean Connery as the mastermind of the great train robbery. Until then, we'll see you at the movies.